Hi, everyone. Welcome to Capital Campaign Essentials, planning and executing your first campaign. I'm Ron Haas, CEO of the Timothy Group. I'm thrilled to have my colleagues join us today. Rich Cummins, our president. Hi, Rich.
Hi.
Hey, senior consultant Jim Kramer. Glad to have Jim.
Hello.
And behind the scenes, Ellie. Are you there, Ellie? There you go. She is going to be our moderator. So what that means is if you have a question, drop it in the chat. If you have a chat, say something. There's a question and answer. She is the moderator. She's going to help us facilitate this today, and we're glad to have you join us. So let's jump in because we together we've guided hundreds of organizations through successful capital campaigns, and we're excited to talk to you about what we've learned so we can encourage you with that as well. So let's just jump right in. So when you think about capital campaigns, I just want to encourage us all. You know this verse really well. Matthew 7:7, Jesus said, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and the door will be open to you." And so I want to encourage you because capital campaigns are an exercise in bold, faith-filled asking. We're not just raising money, we're inviting people to come and join you, partner with you in God's work through your ministry. And so we want to hear from you today. So throughout our time, we're going to have polls and chat questions and a time and questions at the end. So please jump in because we want to make this interactive for you so you can get the most out of this as possible, much as possible. So I want to start with a poll. So the poll is today, where are you in your capital campaign journey? Are you just exploring the idea? Are you planning to launch within 6 months? Are you currently in a campaign? Or have you completed a campaign and think about the next one? Jump in, vote real quick, and just want to kind of see where everybody's at. All right. Oh, that's cool. All right. So, really strong here. So, some are just exploring it, some are planning to launch within 6 months, and some are currently in the campaign. So, thanks for completing that. I think that's helpful for us and for you. So, we got a mix of responses. So, if you're beginning to dream or if you're in the thick of it, today's content will help you move forward with confidence. So, in the next 45 minutes, we're going to walk through 5 essential steps for successful capital campaign. So, the first one is feasibility study and pre-campaign planning, campaign leadership, case for support, and solicitation strategy. And the last one is celebration. So, we're going to walk through this. So, let's start at the beginning. So, Rich, you've led dozens of feasibility studies. You're in several right now. This phase is so critical. So, what mistakes do organizations make when they skip the feasibility study?
Yeah, we would not recommend that at all. There's a lot of good that comes out of a feasibility study. Here's the simple truth. It isn't about whether you can just raise the money. It's actually about whether you should launch a campaign right now. It's about timing. So I've seen organizations that were convinced that they were ready, but then they just discovered that through the study, they needed to strengthen donor relationships first. Maybe the organization wasn't ready to move forward. Maybe it was. And so this is an opportunity to get some of those important data points. I've seen others who thought that they'd never make it, but the study revealed incredible hidden capacity. It might be a school, for instance, that realizes that there's a donor that wants to give land for a soccer field. These things happen all the time, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't jump into a feasibility study. So here's what it does reveal. A proper study will let you know the financial capacity. Can your donor base actually support the goal? It'll let you know leadership readiness. Do we have the right champions? Leaders can bang the drum and get people to follow them. Do we have the right champions that can do that for us? Your case, is it strong? Your case for support. Is your vision compelling enough for people to actually want to give to it? And then timing. Is now the right time or should we wait? So think of it like this. Once again, it's about the case, it's about capacity, it's about leadership, it's about timing, pace. So let me add a tactical piece right here. A feasibility study typically involves 25 to 40 interviews. Less than 25, not enough data points. More than 40, we're starting to get redundancy. But the key here is that we need these to be interviews with your top donors, board members, and then we're going to also send some online surveys to a larger segment of your ministry family. And here's what we're going to ask them, the kind of questions we'll ask. Would you support this project? Would you serve in campaign leadership? What concerns do you have right now? So we'd also ask them what would make the case more compelling. Those are data points that help us inform the campaign when we actually come out with a campaign booklet or brochure and we're making those asks. The feasibility study helps us tweak that messaging. So the timeline, you might be asking, how long does it take? This process usually takes anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. So think of it like this. The first 4 weeks, weeks 1 through 4, we're going to help you develop your case statement and we're going to work with you to identify who those interviewees are. People with wealth. So we want people that have affluence. We want people that have influence. They know everybody. They're connected to people that have wealth. This isn't the time to just get every staff member or every other person plugged in. There's other opportunities to reach a broader audience. Right now, we're thinking primarily about who those people are that are connected to wealth. Weeks 5 through 8, then we're going to begin scheduling and conducting the interviews themselves. Weeks 9 through 11, that's when we're going to take everything that we've compiled from the interviews, from the surveys we sent out. We're going to analyze all that data and prepare our report. Then in the final week, week 12, we're going to present this to your board looking for a go or a no-go decision. So we'll either move forward, maybe there's some things that the organization needs to do, put in place before we move forward. I look at it like a green light, yellow light, red light. Green light, it's a go. We've confirmed the scope, the scale, the price. Yellow light, maybe we're missing a few things that we've got to get in place. Red light, maybe we need to pause right now because there's some fundamental things that need to be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. And here's what some people don't realize about a feasibility study is that this is the beginning of your capital campaign. Those interviews, those are cultivating conversations. You're starting to build momentum, you're testing your message, you're identifying the leaders that can be a part of your campaign. There'll be many times you're going to go back to these individuals that you have these interviews with, and they're going to be key players in your campaign moving forward. It's the catalyst to start to make sure that you have traction and energy behind the project that you're going to be pursuing. So what are some things that we need for the feasibility study? Here's a quick checklist for you to be aware of. You want to make sure that you have clear project plans and a preliminary budget. Many times when we are sitting in feasibility study interviews, people are asking very specific questions about what the project is, what the scope of it is. Some of it gets into the details, what the cost will be and why. You need to be ready to answer those questions at the very beginning in these in the interview process, because this is when you're building the trust and the energy behind these individuals. You also want to make sure you have board unity around the vision itself. If your board is not 100% bought into your capital campaign, you are not ready. You must make sure that all of your key leaders are sound in understanding what the vision is and why we're doing it, and they are bought into the vision of where it's going before you even start having a conversation with anyone else. You want to make sure your current donor database is accurate with contact information. First of all, you want to make sure you have a donor database. There are many organizations that still operate off of Excel sheets and head knowledge, and while those things are great, it'll be very difficult to build traction for a strong capital campaign. You need to be able to go through your list of supporters for the last 5 years at least, those that have shown faithfulness towards your organization, that you can start to dig a little deeper and see how they could be committed to a campaign. You can't do that without accurate information in a donor database. You also need to show history of a successful annual fund performance. If you're not able to year over year meet your operational budget, then your organization is probably not ready for a capital campaign. The study will show this. But you have to be able to at least sustain your operations before you can start to dream bigger, because you're going to be going to many of these donors that are supporting your annual operations and asking them to make a bigger sacrifice for a campaign. So you're not taking from one area and putting it in the other. You're not going to do that. You're going to ask them to still continue to support your annual campaign, but give above and beyond for your capital campaign. So it's important to have a strong annual fund performance to do that. And then finally, the senior leadership within your own organization needs to be on the commitment for this campaign. You're going to have people that are wearing some other hats during this time period, however the campaign may last, 1 year, 2 years. But they need to be on board. They need to be able to support the efforts that are going to be going into this, because it'll be a long haul. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So biggest thing we can say is there needs to be buy-in. There needs to be a vision across the board.
This is really great. Hey, we had a great question. Somebody said, hey, give me the biblical background for a feasibility study. And so there are two or three that come to my mind right immediately. First of all, Jesus said in the parable, whoever wants to build a tower, don't they sit down first and count the cost to see if they have enough money to complete it? And so that one is a great example. Another example to me, I always turn to is Moses. When he sent the spies into the promised land, he said, I want you to go look at the land to see if it's good or bad. Look at the cities, see if they're walled. Look at the soil, look at the trees, bring back some evidence. And so it's like he was doing research. And so a feasibility study is testing your assumptions so that when you launch into a campaign, you're going with confidence and you're not just taking a guess. You're trying to make an informed decision to move forward with confidence. So I like to say the feasibility study is where you earn the right to ask. You're showing your donors that you value their wisdom because you're asking for their input. You're asking for their wisdom and advice, not just their money. So I think that's important. So here's another chat question. Here's an audience participation for us. What's your biggest hesitation or concern about conducting a feasibility study? So just drop a question or comment in the chat to see what would be your concern about launching some sort of a feasibility study. That's great. Well, so thank you for doing that. So one question that people often ask is, what if the feasibility comes back and says we're not ready? And our answer to that is that's really a gift, right? Because it's better to know now that you're not ready than to launch a campaign and get in the middle of it and stall out and realize that you should have done more relationship building and you should have done more prep work to be ready. And so this is why we think making the effort and taking the time to slow down and do your research will pay off in a huge way as you move forward in the campaign. So let's talk about campaign leadership, because that is really the engine that drives the train. So Rich, talk about selecting campaign chairs.
Yeah, glad to. And I'm sure you have somebody in mind already. I do. And I mentioned before, when you need leaders, and leaders bang the drum and they get people to follow. And a capital campaign is high on vision. And so you need leaders to help you do that. And so your campaign chair may not be your biggest donor, might be, but they need to be your biggest influencer. So the one that comes to my mind as I was thinking is a man named Mike. Mike used to lead a big operation. It was in the healthcare field. He had over 10,000 employees, tremendous amount of resources, but was a leader, a Christ follower, and really could get people in the community he lived in to get behind or rally behind a cause, the causes that he cared about. And so Mike one time agreed to be on my campaign, and he agreed to chair it. And he started out with $1 million donation for the campaign, and that was huge. But the even better, Mike said to me, I've got somebody that can give up to 5 times that amount. And so we certainly wanted to connect with that person, and Mike was the conduit to making that happen. So I always tell organizations, find somebody that has these three things: influence, they know everybody. They can connect with people. Affluence, they're connected to resources. And then availability, and that's key. They need to be available. They need to be able to lead meetings, introduce you to people that they know, go on calls. And so if they don't have the three, they're probably not going to be the ideal campaign chair. And so influence in that area matters most. And when I say availability, we don't necessarily need them doing administrative tasks. We need them connecting us to people. And so here's some other things to think about. This person needs to be deeply connected to your mission. They need to care about what you do. This person has to have extensive relational capital in your donor base. They've got to know the people that you're connecting with. This person also needs to be able to open doors that you can't. The person has to have time to dedicate, and this is typically 5 to 10 hours per month. And we're not going to get them weighed down and bogged down in minutia. It's always going to be higher order leadership things. So you don't have to have them give the largest gift, as I mentioned before, but they must give a significant leadership gift to the campaign.
That's good.
That's great, Rich. So choosing the critical chair is critical. You also have to make sure we have the right team that will share their story with a passion. So let's take a look at how this structure could look. It may not be this for every organization, but this is a general breakdown of how a campaign leadership structure could look. So we had mentioned the board of directors. That starts at the top. They need to be bought in and supporting the campaign with their key relationships. Those are often the gatekeepers and the door openers when Rich talks about influence. Those are going to be your influencers within the community. You also then need to have the campaign chair that Rich talked about, leads with influence, affluence, and availability. And I will stress, Rich had mentioned influence on all three of those are key. I would stress availability is also key too, not like Rich said for semantics and tasks, but to be able to bang the drum and to be visible. When we have campaign committee meetings, can they show up for those meetings regularly? Because they're going to be the ones that are steering the energy behind the rest of the campaign committee. So making sure that they can be a part of those. You also need to make sure your staff are available to manage your donor relationships. They work alongside the campaign committee for those. And then a few other committees that are helpful to be aware of. Spiritual Emphasis Committee. For faith-based institutions, I would argue any campaign, but definitely for faith-based institutions. This committee will be some of your strongest advocates for your mission and also the most willing to pray and be in support of what you're doing. You're going to have a lot of people that are hesitant to do certain things like ask for money or go raise awareness. But when you ask them to simply pray over your mission, they're going to bang the drum and they're going to be there for that. And it's probably the most important committee that there is. Major Gifts Committee identifies, cultivates, and solicits gifts of $10,000 or more. And this could be flexible depending on the size of your organization. Maybe your major gifts are $5,000, $10,000, $25,000. It really is based on the scale of what your capital campaign is going to be. Is it going to be $1 million campaign? Is it a $5 million campaign? Is it a $20 million campaign? That'll dictate some of what your major gifts scale will look like. And then a marketing and communications committee. So this will be people that can help craft your story, give ideas on how to use digital media, how to use print media, create some video for your campaigns, things like that. And then a church relations committee for organizations that have partnerships with the churches. This is key because churches are often the gateways to the individuals that will be strong supporters and advocates for the campaign. So key church leadership with the pastors, with the elders, with the deacons, people that are part of churches that are prominent in your community. Have them be a part of your campaign because they can be voices to other individuals that they know of within their own congregation. And then just a few others. You have a general gifts committee that organizes large and small events that kind of just brings in the overall gifts for the campaign. A gifts in kind committee. This will be identifying and soliciting local vendors for gifts that could help for the campaign. May not be a monetary gift, but maybe someone wants to donate concrete. They want to pave your parking lot, and they're going to give you all the supplies for that. These would be gifts in kind. And then a corporate and foundations committee. So these are people that have good ties within your local community foundations, your family foundations, that they can speak and be part of maybe those presentations to their boards. They can research the opportunities that are available, let you know the timelines. Every foundation is different. Many foundations have applications that are once a year or twice a year. So knowing when those are ready, you have to prep ahead of time for that. So having a committee that can do that research for you will keep traction going. So this is why your structure matters most. You're creating a system where nobody involved is overwhelmed and everyone has a very clear role of what to do.
Absolutely. And thank you, Jim. And we don't want you to get overwhelmed by the system. That's a lot of committees. Don't stress over that. We've done this many, many times. We'll help guide you through the process. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships. That's key. So out of the gate, we want to find a chairperson. We want to have a steering committee. That spiritual emphasis committee Jim was talking about. For me, that's the most important one. We want people on their hands and feet before God, just praying for the success of this campaign. And then we'll look at your major gift committee, some of the big important ones to get in place first. And down the road, we would help you add some of those other committees too. But let's talk about numbers. So what do you need for a campaign to actually operate effectively? And so first of all, you need a campaign chair, and you might have two. So sometimes I have an honorary chair. Maybe somebody's lending a name. They've been an emeritus person, the former CEO or board member, somebody that everybody knows that really doesn't have time to do much, but maybe make some introductions. And then alongside that person, you might have more of an active chair. So you might have two chairs here. Then you're looking at 6 to 8 steering committee members. And I get this question all the time. How many steering committee members? I'd rather have 6 to 8. I'd rather have 6 fully on fire steering committee members that want to introduce us to people, that want to help us raise funds, than 12 or 15 lukewarm ones that don't get anything done. So that's a sweet spot, 6 to 8. Then you're going to need about 8 to 10 members for major gift solicitation. And it depends on the size of the campaign. Obviously, a larger campaign, you need more solicitors. Smaller campaign, fewer. And some of those solicitors will be on the steering committee, but not all those steering committee members have the passion, the drive, the desire, the skill set to actually solicit gifts. So we're going to identify those people who are more than willing to make an ask, share a story. It's all about sharing stories, why you care about the mission of this organization. Then we're going to need a total of about 15 to 20 volunteers when you add it all up. And remember, this focus is not building this dynamic system and fundraising machine, although that's part of it. We really want to focus on building relationships here. And now here's another key pointer to think in terms of. We're looking at the 80-20 rule here when we're talking about these relationships. 80% of your goal is going to come from 20% of your donors. We see that every time. Sometimes it's even 90-10, but generally it's about 80% of your funds will come from your top 20 donors. And so this means that your leadership structure should be laser focused on personally soliciting your top 50 to 100 prospects.
It's a real top-down emphasis. I've had campaigns, watched campaigns, they've tried to recruit 100 volunteers and everybody's going to raise $5,000 or $1,000 and they're going to raise $100. So that's exhausting. It's ineffective. It's more of a top-down focus. If you recruit 10 to 20 key leaders and each secured 2 to 3 major gifts, it's quality over quantity. And so we're really focused on the top 10 gifts make the difference to every campaign, whether it's $1 million campaign or $100 million campaign. You've got to really focus in on those top key leaders. Well, let's go one more step. This is the third step in this process of your case for support. So, Rich, tell us about a compelling case. You've seen lots of cases. Why do they work? Which one doesn't work? Give us some insight.
Yeah, glad to. Remember, one thing that's critical here is people don't give to a case for support. I've never seen that happen. A case for support, a strong one, is utilized by a person who will make a connection and deliver that case for support and hopefully lead to a big gift. But that case is pretty important. And so let's discuss that. It's all about giving the right vision. Donors don't just give to need, they give to vision. The bigger the vision, the more inspired they are to give. And so think of the case for support as actually the heartbeat of your fundraising. It's not just a formal document. It's the story of why your work actually matters to the real world. And if you can't explain it in plain and simple English, what problem you're trying to solve and why it's urgent, people just won't know how they fit into this picture. So a compelling case cuts through the noise and speaks directly to your donor's heart. It'll make them feel like they aren't just giving money to any organization, but they're helping personally give to a neighbor or a situation that might change a life. So without a really clear emotional spark, even the best programs can feel just like a set of statistics, just a piece of paper, information on a page. And we don't want that. We want this to speak to your donors' hearts. So here's an example. I'm going to give you an example of a weak case for support. So here's a weak one. Our 50-year-old building needs repairs. The roof leaks, the HVAC is failing, and we need $2 million to fix it. That's all about a need. That's about a need that's very specific. But let's just reframe this a little bit and make it more of a strong case. So how about this? For 50 years, this building has been where lives are changed. Every Sunday, 500 people encounter Christ right here. Every Wednesday, in fact, 200 students discover their purpose. Now it's time to ensure this sacred space serves the next generation with excellence. Our $2 million renovation will create an environment
Hmm.
worthy of the transformation that God is doing. You see the difference here? It's really the same project, but a completely different lens. We're framing it in a whole different way.
So this is helpful. I think this example that I have here on the screen is from Olivet Nazarene University. We did a $75 million campaign for them. And the case for support actually ended up being in the actual campaign. It was like a 18 page document. I had to look at that. But it answered three essential questions. So why is this important? What will we accomplish? What are the specific outcomes that we're trying to do? And how can I help? You know, so it's like, why this? Why now? Why me? You're trying to answer those questions so a donor understands how they can fit into this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's going to need to be a suite of tools, some campaign materials that you need to have on hand and at the ready when you're going into this in this campaign mode. So here are some essential materials. The first one, Ron had highlighted just a little bit on that past slide, a campaign brochure. This can be an 8 to 12 page piece. It can be sometimes as big as 16 to 20. But this should be a really well done brochure, very high graphic, high quality paper. The last thing you want to do is go to a potential major donor that you're going to ask seven figures for and hand them a one sheet paper that's very flimsy with bad ink. You need to show that your whole entire organization is intentional behind this project, that you're investing into this project, and that you're taking it seriously. So having professionally produced quality materials is going to set the tone right away when you go and talk to people about your project. Also, want to make sure you have pledge cards available. This should be simple, clear, with multiple payment options. Nothing that gets convoluted or hard to read or understand. But when you're meeting with individuals, you will have an opportunity to leave with them a pledge card. They may or may not fill it out then for you to take, but it should be on the hand and ready so that they can begin to mull over where they may see themselves fall into this campaign with their own point of giving. An FAQ document. So anticipate any objections that may come up with this campaign. Try to write those out and jot them down so that you're on the ready and that you can have those things prompted and ready to go. You also want to show a gift range chart for your campaign. This is really effective for donors to see where they may fit into the various levels of giving that you have within your campaign. Rich talked about the 80-20. Sometimes we see it as a reverse pyramid. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but 80% of your funds are going to come from those 20% of the donors, and they need to see where they're going to fall in the range of that pyramid. So maybe your top part of your pyramid is going to be a seven-figure gift, $1 million or more, and then you're breaking it down from there, 100 to 250,000, then 50,000 to 100,000, and then 25 to 50,000. You have those ranges outlined so that when you're asking them for a gift, you can point to the ranges on that chart and say, where do you see yourself falling? How can you pray about where you might be an impact? Some other helpful materials to be aware of. make sure that you have a video, a compelling video that tells your story. Very succinct, 2 to 3 minutes, very vision focused. It doesn't get drawn out, but it tells the story very well and it brings out the reason why this is important. If it's a building campaign, make sure it has architect renderings that are showing the layout, that shows what the current building is, if it's a renovation, or if it's a new building, what it's going to be. And so that they have questions, you can point to it and show where it's all going to fall into place. Make sure you have donor testimonials that show evidence that your organization is trustworthy and reliable and worth investing into, because you have a history of donors that are faithfully investing into your organization, and they can give testimony to that. And then have an individual campaign website. This should be separate from your own organization's website. This should be a landing page that's different, so that people can go directly to the campaign and see the outline for it. They can see the Q&As, they can see the references, all the gift charts. You don't want to send them just to your webpage and have them get lost shuffling trying to find campaign materials. You want to make it as easy as possible for people to find the materials they need to have. So having an actual campaign website or a landing page is going to be very effective. And then a couple of things that are just nice to have and be aware of: a premium donor brochure. So if you have a top-end donor, or even donors that you know have certain areas of focus they want to support in a campaign because of where their heart is, maybe for example, Rich and I served in an organization. We had multiple facets within the ministry, and one of them was a camp. And then there was also some church teams and things like that. But there would be brochure items that we would put together specifically for the camp, because we knew there were people that were very had their heart invested into the camp itself. So if there are areas in your ministry or your organization that you know your donor is going to be most interested in, create a campaign brochure that is directly targeted and outlining what their heart is at, so that they're not getting lost in the shuffle of all the other things that they may not have interest in. Have a campaign newsletter that goes out regularly. The more that you can build transparency about the campaign and what's going on and the traction that's being done, the more momentum that you will build with your base. And then some social media graphics and things that you can just have on the regular, whether it's a thermometer chart that shows where you're at. We're at this level and we're going to try to get to this level. And we'll talk about this a little more. Some of this will be for the public phase. We have what's called the quiet phase and the public phase. But in the public phase, it's good to have some of these graphics to continue to build more momentum with the donor base as you continue to build out traction.
That's really good, Jim. When I think about all of these materials, it is so time intensive, and there is a tendency to make sure everybody in your organization signs off on it. And I just want to encourage you that don't let perfect materials delay personal conversations. I've seen campaigns wait for 4 months for the perfect brochure, and the momentum dies, because you're waiting for, even sending out a thank you note sometimes gets so complex, and for no reason. We need to be donor focused and don't wait for the perfect brochure. Get 80% of it done and then start having conversations and refine a thing as you go, because we wait and wait and wait for that perfect moment, and that perfect moment never comes.
Remember, the brochure isn't going to solicit somebody to give. A person is going to. You do need to have all the materials. You have to have them. They have to be excellent. They have to be excellent. But you also need to have a well-prepared, passionate leader sitting across the table from a donor, sharing the vision with authenticity. You need Mike, that I explained before, that loves the mission of your organization and wants to introduce you to other people. But that person, Mike, needs to be prepared. That's why you have to have a solid case statement and these supportive materials around him or her to actually find success.
Yeah, absolutely. And another powerful tool to think about as you're going into this campaign and ways to approach donors for contributing is naming opportunities. So if you're working on a building project, you should have areas that you can either build the entirety of the building or specific areas within the building that would be naming opportunities. They should be meaningful and permanent. So you don't want something that you're going to name a building after someone and then 5 years later you're opening it up for someone else to have the building named after, right? You want this to be something that's building a legacy for someone. The range from 25,000 to 7 figures, depending on what part of the building they are supporting. If it's an entire building, that's probably a 7-figure gift or more. If it's $25,000, maybe that's a room, right? A part of the building that they can make a donation in honor of someone. You want it to connect to the donor's values So you shouldn't be having someone be approached for a naming opportunity for an athletic complex at your institution if the donor is actually heavily interested in the arts, right? You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you understand where the heart of the donor is at and where it would be most effective to approach them. And then be limited in the number of availability. Exclusivity matters, especially people that really are interested in naming opportunities. If it's just them and maybe another couple, that's more effective and more valuable than 20 people being approached for naming opportunities for the same project. You want to have exclusivity. So a couple of examples of what this could look like. For example, the Johnson Family Chapel, if you have a chapel on your campus, if you're a college and institution, that would be a $500,000 contribution, for example. The Smith Leadership Center for $250,000, or a classroom, a specific classroom within the building in memory of someone or in honor of someone for $50,000. These are just some examples of what you could do. But again, as you can see, this wants to be catered towards the donor and the values that mean most to them when you approach them for these opportunities.
And just kind of a rule of thumb on naming, the naming should be, the value of the gift should be half the value of what it costs to build that particular piece of the building, right? So if it's a $1 million chapel, it's a $500,000 naming rights. If it's a $5 million building, it's a $2.5 million naming rights. Those are all negotiations. Those are all some people don't want to have. I had one donor said, "Hey, would you like to put your name on it?" He says, "No, I don't want my name on anything." And we said, "Well, why is that?" He says, "Because I don't want to have people like you come talk to me about something else."
Ron, I had a donor one time say that when he came on the scene, he'd been building a business for years, but it was like a nasty game of whack-a-mole or a groundhog. When he'd raise his head up, everybody came after him. He'd pop it back down, and they'd, all that kind of stuff. And so you're right. They come after you once they figure that out.
That's
So
funny. All right. Well, so let's step 4. What's the solicitation strategy you're going to employ in your capital campaign? Well, this is where the rubber meets the road. So every successful campaign follows this principle. So it's top down, inside out. And what that means is that you always want to secure your largest gifts first. That is so critical. You can't build this from the bottom up. It just doesn't work. So you've got to secure your largest gifts first because they lead the pace. They set the pace for everybody else. And early momentum really builds confidence. I mean, if you walk into a campaign and you've got 50% of your money in hand and you go to the next donor, that next donor says, "Wow, this is going to win. I like that. I want to be in part of that." So large gifts inspires others. So top down, but then inside out. You got to start with those who are closest to the organization. We always have this dream of some mystery donor in 3 states away is going to give us the lead gift. That happens. It could happen. But we really need to start with who you know right now. Think of an archery target. Start in the bullseye. Those who are closest to your organization. Board members must give first. You need to have 100% participation. It doesn't have to be the lead gifts, but it needs to be something that for them is a sacrificial gift. Then campaign leadership. Then you go to your major donor prospects. And then finally, you're going to go to your broader constituents. So you're taking this in a cadence, making sure you secure these lead gifts before you go to the next level and before you go to even your major gifts, and then certainly before you go to the general constituency.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see what this kind of timeline could look like played out. This could vary, but generally you're going to start with the quiet phase, 1 to 3 months. Sometimes this can go 4 months or 5 months, depending on your organization. But what is a quiet phase? A quiet phase is when you're going to approach key donors, 10 to 20 of those donors, and approach them for lead gifts for this campaign. You should try to raise 50 to 60% of your overall fund for the campaign during this quiet phase. There is a mentality some people have when we start a campaign. Board members and donors will say, we need to tell as many people as possible. We got to get the word out right now. We've got so much money to raise. How are we ever going to accomplish this task? So some people start right away and they want to go public, right? The problem with that is that when you go public and you have that little thermometer on your website and you're raising $10 million for a campaign and you show that you have $2,500, what does that do mentally to people that want to give to your campaign? Well, those donors that can give $500, $1,000, they see that gap and they think my contribution means nothing. I can't have an impact on this campaign, right? So the quiet phase eliminates that. It allows you to get 50 to 60% of the total raised before you even start to go to public, so that you can start to build traction before it gets into a main stage. So the board makes sure they give first, their leadership team gives, and it's at the next level beyond that. But this sets the tone when you go meet with other donors. It's not uncommon for a donor to ask who supports it within your own organization. They want to see that there's an investment within your own leadership and your own board. This phase should be invitation only. You should only be reaching out to key individuals. These meetings often happen within their homes, outside in spaces that are not public, so that you can have a personal conversation that invites them into this campaign. So then the next is the major gifts phase. This should be about 4 to 9 months. This gets into that next level of the pyramid. The next 30 to 35% of your campaign comes from this. This should be prospects of about 50 to 100 donors. These would be your $25,000 givers, $50,000 givers, $100,000 givers that can fill in that next level of the pyramid. These should be personal solicitations by your volunteer teams, reaching out to them. Still somewhat quiet, but there's kind of a selective announcement in this. So there is a word, there is a buzz that's starting to happen when you get into this phase, but you're still not public. You're still not putting this right on your website. You're still not releasing materials out to the news media. This allows you to get up to about 85% of your total campaign to be raised. This gets you into the last general phase, or what some people call the public phase. So the last 10 to 15 months, you have to raise 10 to 50% of your goal. And what this does is now all of a sudden, when you go public and you've got your thermometer in your website and you're showing 85 to 90% already raised, the strong base of supporters, quantity of your supporters, which is probably in the thousands that give $500 gifts, $1,000 gifts, right? All of a sudden, their value is considered there. That $500 contribution means a lot more at this stage in the game. So make sure that you are blasting this across the entire constituency at this point. Public launch events, this is when you can have a luncheon or a dinner that says, hey, we are about to finish this campaign, help us reach our goal. And then get ready to celebrate. Get ready to plan for how you're going to have a ribbon cutting, a groundbreaking ceremony. You're going to have it in the news media. You're going to build excitement in the community around what this project is. If you follow these kind of patterns, you're going to set yourself up for really strong likelihood for success if you go in these orders.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Super helpful. And let me state something too. That 15-month timeline is in a perfect case scenario. So remember, sometimes your donor database isn't fully cultivated yet. Maybe you have a much bigger goal. So it could take you in that quiet phase and the major gift phase. That could take a little bit longer, sometimes upwards of 12 months to 18 months. So I just want to be really clear with expectations that if everything is lined up perfectly, the donor pool is cultivated in a proper way, you've got all the committees that you'd ever want, then we can get this thing done in short order. But a lot of times you need to plan for 12 months to 18 months on one of these campaigns to get through the quiet and leadership phase. So now, what are the elements that spell out success for one of these campaigns? There are some things that are really important. Campaigns are a series of individual asks with your most capable donors. And so that's a key there, especially when you're looking at those top tier gifts. Those are capital campaigns within themselves. So if you're asking for a deep 6 or a 7-figure gift, you're going to spend a lot of time researching and preparing properly to make that ask in a right way. Remember, fundraising is the right person making the right ask for the right project in the right way and the right time. And so a campaign like this is going to be very important that you think methodically through the process and you do these things the right way. Another thing that spells out success is that asking is a team sport. It's very definitely a best practice. Don't go alone. Then the ideal team is maybe a volunteer peer. Maybe you have your chair of your campaign or a solicitor that goes along with a board member or a staff member. And so two are better than one. It's biblical. One person puts 1,000 to flight. Two people put 10,000 to flight. And so how have I seen it play out? Well, for instance, I might be an executive director and I might take a board member with me. The board member can clearly articulate why he or she gives their time, their talent, and their treasure, especially to this campaign. And I can give the vision and then maybe make the ask. And so two are better than one. Both can be listening in while others are talking so they can compare notes afterwards. Best practice. Another one would be peer asks. And so the staff actually supports this by taking along one of these volunteers. Remember, if I'm a paid consultant, most of you in the room are likely professional fundraisers to some capacity. And so that's important. But a peer, actually somebody that does not get paid by the organization, has a little bit more credibility in some cases with other donors. So take a peer of theirs with you when you're going to go make that ask. And this is powerful because donors give to people just like them and not to organizations.
That's helpful, Rich. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. I want to review the 5 campaign essentials as we move forward. So, first of all, we talked about the feasibility study. Don't skip this step. It's so important. You need to know where you stand. You need to know that you're going to win before you start. And so, the feasibility study, you're going to have conversations with your key people. Someone in the question says, well, my executive director wants to do the feasibility study yourself. That's fine. You can, but having a consultant means you have a third party giving some input. And, sometimes your major donors don't want to tell you what's wrong, but they'll tell us, hey, they need to fix this. And so we can be that voice. We can listen. We can give you ideas. But the thing about doing a feasibility study is how do you interpret the results, right? I mean, we've seen hundreds of feasibility studies and some came in interestingly high and we said, I don't know that that's really what it should be. So it's like the feasibility study is not just the data, it's the interpretation of the data to know what is the right next step. And so that's how we can come alongside and help you. The next one is campaign leadership. You're trying to figure out who do you have on your team that could really support this. And so we even ask in our feasibility study, hey, would you volunteer? And we give you back the list of names and what they said they might do. Your case for support, this is the opportunity to test your assumptions. Many times in the feasibility study, we learn things that you missed and we help you refine your case for the campaign. And so the campaign might not look quite the same as it did in your feasibility study because now you're adding a component, maybe you're adjusting something, you're trying to make sure you're hitting your target. Your solicitation strategy, top down, inside out, you need to have those, and that's how we help you come alongside it and help you have those conversations. And then celebration. We didn't even talk about celebration because we're out of time, and it's exciting to be celebrating about this, but what we want to do is continue this conversation with you offline. If you have a campaign that you're thinking about, we want to encourage you. We want to have conversations with you. And, if we can help you, we'd love to do that. But I appreciate that you came today. So, first of all, Rich and Jim and Ellie behind the scenes, she's doing all sorts of stuff with chat. Thank you so much. She's fielding the questions. We would love to continue the conversation. So thanks for joining us today. As a gift for joining us, you're going to get an email, a follow-up, and it's going to have all of the slide deck. There's going to be a link to a questionnaire. There's going to be, that's our gift, but then a gift for sharing your feedback. We have a downloadable resource called Capital Campaign Planning Checklist. And so many of the things we talked about today, it's written in a form where you can just go through and say, got that, need this, better find that, don't know that. but it's just kind of this little tool that can help you as you prepare for your campaign. So as we close out, Rich, any final thoughts for this topic?
Well, this is one of my favorite topics, Ron. Absolutely love capital campaigns, and like you mentioned, I'm leading a couple of feasibility studies right now, and a couple of other campaigns too. And so I think preparation is a big key. There is a question here, and we might have a time for a Q&A or two. And I love this one. So maybe my parting thought would be to answer this question: what are the next steps for an organization that is not yet ready for a capital campaign? What specific advice would you give to get ready? That's from Rebecca. Well, one of the biggest things, Rebecca, as Ron mentioned, this is a top-down, inside-out proposition. We also talked about the 80-20 rule. Those leadership gifts are significant. Those big gifts are key. So cultivating your donor base is so important. Making sure that we're getting those donors ready for something big, having those big conversations. Something that we do for many organizations that aren't ready to do a campaign, we do what's called our major donor game plan, where we'll come in for maybe 6 months up to a year and help your team get ready to do this type of work, to build those relationships, to research them properly, to actually cultivate the relationships, make the ask in a right way, thank people in a proper way, and steward those relationships. So next step might be for you, and you may even have us do an assessment. We've done that too. We can come in before even a feasibility study and give you an idea if or not you're ready organizationally to move forward with a campaign. So there's two steps: an organizational readiness assessment, and then the second one would be a major donor game plan. That's what I've got, Ron.
Oh, that's
Yep.
great. Jim, final
Ron and
word from
Rich,
you.
yeah. Yeah, sorry to jump in. Ellie has been jotting down a few of those questions that were in the chat. So feel free to chime in. But there was a question about recommending or discouraging volunteers on more than one committee. Uh, if you guys have insights onto that. And then another was what are some of the dangerous false positives you see during a feasibility interview that come out from those results? And then a third was what are some approximate costs of a feasibility study?
Real quick on encouraging or discouraging for multiple committees. It really depends on the organization and the person and the time that they have. One thing I don't want to do is bog people down with minutia, which I mentioned before. I might have somebody that serves on the steering committee that's also going to be on the major gift committee because they are good with people and they're okay with making an ask. So in that case, I would say yes. But by and large, you don't want people's time is valuable, and you don't want to bog them down with too many responsibilities that you might be able to assign to a staff member. Higher order, get them doing the most important things, and if that means sitting on one committee, sit on one committee. If they can do multiple, then figure that out.
That's great. That's great. Well, we'd love to continue the conversation with you. And if we can help in any way, please reach out. And as you get the email from us, please fill out the survey. We want to improve what we do. Please reach out and contact us with your questions. As you fill out the questionnaire, you're going to get this resource campaign checklist. I want you to have that because I want you to have that for your board, your administration, your team to really have these important conversations. Say, are we really ready? What's the next step? And how can we be successful? Well, God bless you today. Thank you so much. Again, as I started today with Matthew 7:7, ask and it will be given to you. And I just want to encourage you, go ask boldly, trust God with the outcome, and watch Him do immeasurably more than you can imagine. God bless you guys. Thanks so much for joining us.